You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek and rocking solo dolo tonight. So Kevin's off doing some JOB things. So yeah, good luck. Have fun with that. But we'll rock and roll through some fantasy football weekly huddle all by my lonesome here, as well as everybody out there tuning in and watching and listening. So let's throw out your questions. Let's make sure we're rocking and rolling through everybody out there, getting that ready to go. Mr. COD Reapers in the chat saying, hey, Derek. Hello, Mr. COD. Welcome in. So a little bit different show that we're going to go through tonight than what we do a lot of Friday nights there, right? Where Kevin and I go through the entire slate of games here and kind of give our picks back and forth on, talking spreads, talking totals, talking props, all of that kind of stuff. I figured that might be a little bit boring, just me going through that and giving those takes all by my lonesome here. So we're going to do things a little bit different. This show is going to be far more tonight about making sure that we're answering every question that comes in there, right? We do that every week, but one of those that if you have a question, throw it out there and we're gonna talk about it just as soon as I get through all the questions. So make sure you're getting those out there, and then we'll go through some of the games, some of the slates, all of that kind of good stuff, and hit up some things that I'm going to be keeping an eye on, and some questions that I've kind of got going into each one of these games, and we'll just kind of bounce around and go through that. COD Reaper saying last night's game put me to sleep. I thought it was actually far more. There was far more fireworks in it than I thought we would have. I really thought that game last night between Pittsburgh and the Patriots, we would have a game that ended with 0 touchdowns scored. This would be a thing where, we might be lucky if we got to a total like 15 points. And we about got to the over before halftime. Like there was actually a lot more points scored in that game. Actually, I think we did get to the over before halftime on that one. So a lot more points put up in that game than I thought there would be. There's certainly a lot more kind of fantasy points put up there as well, right? Like we had a Zeke sighting. Bailey Zappi actually had a pretty decent game. I thought it was interesting that seemingly every time the Steelers touched the ball on offense, that the hometown crowd was just kind of booing them. So you're right. Like it was one of those that there was not a ton of marquee fantasy options in that. And but I think it was actually more entertaining than I thought it would be in there. I really thought we would see a defensive struggle, defensive slobber knocker, so to speak, in that one. So it just kind of depended on what you were watching that game for, though, too, I suppose. So not a bad game. Certainly a lot more points than I thought we would have. Especially like Vegas even thought that was going to be a low scoring game when you're talking a total of 30 implied points to it. So, and we hit that by halftime. So a lot more points put up there than I thought there would be. So if you guys have questions about your fantasy rosters, things like that, let's make sure we're going through that and rocking and rolling through all of that. My players. Yeah, I could see that. I sat there and purposely pivoted away off of just about any player that I was putting in that matchup, except for defenses, right? If I had Pittsburgh's defense, if I had the Patriots defense, I was playing those guys going into that game last night, just simply from the standpoint I didn't think there'd be many points scored. So I mean there's some of that, right? Like a lot of the guys that we really may have thought early on in the season would have some fantasy relevant in that game. They just kind of didn't. But so let's kind of start going through some of these things and some things to kind of watch for through some of these games early on. And so there's some interesting things that I'm kind of looking for in each one of these matchups and how that's going to look and work. We'll kind of start off here with the Rams and the Ravens matching up against each other. The Ravens right now currently in the 2nd seed in the AFC, right behind the Dolphins, who have it on a tiebreaker type of thing there going into week 14. And I think we're going to see the Ravens show up and show out on this one, right? The Rams have really struggled their last few matchups as an underdog. They're 0-3 against the spread in their last 3 games. The Ravens, that at home. That defense is just doing some brilliant things there. So I think that we're going to see the Ravens kind of potentially walk away with this one at home. I think that defense is going to ball out here. I do think that there's some other good things to kind of keep an eye out and be aware of in this one, right? So the Ravens defense has been really good. I'm kind of worried a little bit about Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua in this one. So there could be some interesting challenges in this one for them. So I'm going to temper my expectations with both of those guys. I think that we probably see the Ravens run offense do some decent things in this one, but I do think that we're going to see this one very, very heavily favor the Ravens in this one, and Vegas kind of leaning that way as well, with the Ravens being pretty good favorites, being a touchdown favorite going into this one. So just something to kind of keep an eye out there. And if I've got some of the Rams receivers, right, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, I'm going to be probably playing them, but I might be looking if I can pivot, or if it makes sense to pivot, I might do that. But most likely, like I know in the home league, I'm going to be playing Puka when it comes down to it. So yeah, it really depends on what option you're going to be potentially pivoting from there. Right, if I'm looking at the Lions and the Bears this weekend, right, like these are two teams on different spectrums of the end of season as it comes down to it, right? The Bears are at this point playing for draft picks, right? Carolina seemingly kind of has that number one pick locked up, and the Bears have that draft pick from last year, with Carolina moving up to draft Bryce Young, and then Chicago's pick is going to be a top 10 pick as well. So again, if they don't win, that pick gets I think right now it's a top 8 pick. So they can trend that way and potentially even move that pick up a little bit based on if some of the other teams below them win a few games there. So there's some interesting things there. Now, a couple of things to really kind of keep this one in, like, to look at. The Bears have struggled in their last 9 games following a bye. They're 1-8 against the spread, right? So that doesn't look good for them going into this game. But something else to keep in mind here: the Lions and Jared Goff specifically, like there's a crazy Jared Goff home road split that happens, and that we've seen that play out in this season, right? Jared Goff much better at home for fantasy purposes than he is on the road. The Lions are on the road here. Also, very sneakily, the Bears have been really good against opposing quarterbacks in allowing fantasy points, right? Like, they're a tough matchup the last few weeks here in allowing quarterback points there. So there's that. Couple that with the fact that Jared Goff has struggled a little bit on the road there. Like, this could be a matchup where Jared Goff and the Lions may have some issues through the air on this one. So again, right, like, you're obviously going to be playing Amon-Ra St. Brown, playing Sam Laporta, things like that. But I would potentially be looking at tempering the expectations around those guys, just simply from the standpoint that we've seen Jared Goff struggle on the road. The Bears have been good lately against opposing quarterbacks and allowing points to them. So there is some of those things at play there. This is one that I'm actually looking at, right? Like, the spread isn't what you would think on this one. And I think Vegas is kind of seeing some of the same things that I'm looking at and that kind of stuff, just from the standpoint that they have this thing as a 4.5 point spread. And these are two teams at wildly different spectrums right now, as far as how their season is played out there. So this one here could be a tight game. And I would expect it to be a tight game, being a divisional matchup. The Bears have more to play for when it comes to a draft pick. The Lions, with a win, they can get really close to just kind of locking up the division, right? Like, it's not mathematically locked at that point, but it moves it moves the dial tremendously for them to win the division with a win here in Chicago. So something else to kind of keep an eye on that one. So COD Reaper asking thoughts on Mostert and Tyreek Hill, both of them. Is that Tyreek Hill or Taysom Hill? COD, let me know. So we'll just start with the Mostert side of things while I'm waiting for that answer on the Hill, if that's Tyreek or Taysom. But looking at Mostert, this is a Miami team that's been really good, right? They're going up against Tennessee this week. Tennessee is not the formidable run defense that we've seen in years past. So he's in for a decent matchup there, right? Like a lot of folks are pointing to the fact that, well, Devon Achane is back. Devon Achane's back. We saw all of this wildly crazy split on this that, that Mostert only had the snap share went way down, touches went way down, all of these types of things. This is very much what we said many weeks ago, where if you've got a Miami Dolphins running backs, you've got to be okay with them getting 12 opportunities a game on the higher side of things, and that's just where it's going to be, right? And that's about what we see that play out there. Now, the game this last week here, we saw where that game got a little bit out of hand, and the Dolphins rested Mostert more so on the back half of that game there. So there is something to be said on that one. I think that Mostert, he returned to practice today, so it looks like he still carries that kind of questionable tag, things like that. Looks like he returned to practice today, so he's trending the right way to play, and he's probably RB2, back end RB2 type of play this week. So I think, if you've got him, you still want to play him on that one. And so it is Taysom Hill. Okay, that's good to know that I'm not going down the wrong Hill rabbit hole, so to speak, there with thinking you're talking about Tyreek and we're talking about Taysom. So let's take a look at Taysom Hill here. Taysom Hill, again, he's kind of questionable. He's dealing with kind of a twofer, right? When talking about a little bit of hand, a little bit of foot is what it's being reported. On that one, looked like he missed the entire weeks of practice here. So he could, when a player misses the entire week of practice, that's not trending in a good way for him to be able to play on that one. So that's one of those that you're going to have to really, really look at the injury reports, and you'll get the injury reports 90 minutes before this thing kicks off. Now, the good news is that this game is in the early window on this one with the Saints, teeing off against Carolina. So yeah, you'll get those updates 90 minutes beforehand, and you should be able to pick a guy up off of the waiver wire and play him and stream him, right? Like if you're playing Taysom Hill and he goes down, Juwan Johnson might be a guy that's really a good play at that point. Taysom Hill being down, Juwan Johnson kind of immediately gets elevated on that one. There's also a chance that Olave may not be ready to go on this one. He's battling a little bit of a flu, I think is what was reported on that one, and he's missed the last couple of days of practice. So there could be, the Saints could be without some of their passing options there. And if that's the case, Juwan Johnson looks like a very good option for a pickup and stream tight end at that point. So with Taysom Hill, you're just going to have to kind of look and see what that's going to look like here over the, when we really get into the pregame injury reports there. And you'll get those things 90 minutes before. So you'll have plenty of time to be able to pick somebody up and add him in there. And like I just said, Juwan Johnson should be available in a vast majority of leagues out there. All righty, let's go ahead and head over to one of the next matchups here. And we're going to be taking a look here at the Colts and the Bengals. And if you had told me in preseason that the Colts were looking at potentially having a they're fighting for a wild card spot in week 14. I don't know that I would have believed you, but here we are, and they're just outside that bubble, kind of looking in on this one. So the Colts have a lot to play for. The Bengals have a lot to play for. These are two teams that are right there on the bubble, and they really are that they've got to win and win a lot of games down the stretch here to kind of push themselves up and in. Both of these teams playing with their backup quarterbacks. Again, very interesting to kind of see how that one's looked at here. Now the Colts have really been playing some really good inspired football down the stretch here. Really looking for Michael Pittman to have another really good game in this one. We've seen him put up several good games in a row here. And this is one of those two that the Colts are the team that I think is going to find a way to get this thing done, even though that they're the road dogs here. This is a team that's just playing hot, playing inspired, and I don't know that I necessarily trust Jake Browning to come in there and put up 2 weeks in a row of what we saw him do this last Monday night. Like I don't know that we're going to see 2 weeks in a row of him being that efficient and that just kind of good and really keeping the game going that way. So I think he returns to earth just a little bit on this one. I think the Colts continue to play inspired. Minshew, Pittman certainly have a connection there, and I think that they're going to have another pretty good game here. And I do think the Colts can get a sneaky one. So I think that we could see the Colts go into Cincinnati and sneak away with a win. Speaking of Jake Browning's performance, let's go ahead and take a look at the team he played last week and their matchup this week. That, of course, was the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars playing the Browns. Again, right, like this kind of depends on what kind of narrative you're looking at and what kind of story street that you're looking at. But the Jaguars have led by Doug Peterson. Cleveland's defense, that defensive coordinator James Schwartz, both of these guys coached together on the same staff in Philadelphia in 2017 when they won the Super Bowl together, right? Schwartz was the defensive coordinator for Doug Peterson. So these guys know each other pretty well, right? Like they know they when you do it at that high of a level, these guys know how each other kind of thinks and works and how they're going to work through that. So very interesting to see kind of the chess match that plays out here on Sunday between Peterson and Schwartz, and really how that's going to kind of interact and come to play there, right? Joe Flacco looked pretty serviceable, pretty good for a guy that hadn't really even been on a roster up until just a couple weeks ago. And this is one where you got both teams currently in the playoff picture, both of them fighting to stay that way. Trevor Lawrence very much up in the air on this one. So I don't know that I'm really looking for him to be effective, but that could drastically sway, change and sway how this game's going to play out. If we do not see if we have to watch CJ Beathard take the field there. And I do think that that's the way that this is going to lean and work. So Cleveland's defense at home also been extremely, extremely good. So I think that we could see him. I think this could be one of those that this could be a lower scoring affair and one that, we may have to try and pivot to some other options on this one as well, with the fact that we've got the Joe Flacco, CJ Beathard, matchup here, along with everything that I'm seeing kind of leans more and more towards Cleveland. It's supposed to be kind of rainy, about 39 degrees. Like all of these things kind of point towards more of a defensive struggle anyway. And defense has been Cleveland's calling card all season long. So this could be a very, very interesting matchup on this one. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the Carolina and the New Orleans game. And this one here is going to be very interesting as well, right? Like two teams fighting it out here. The Saints have been, the Saints are injury bit a little bit going into this one, right? We just talked about Taysom Hill potentially not being able to go on this one at the tight end. Chris Olave battling a little bit of an injury on this one. From everything I've seen, Derek Carr has yet to clear concussion protocol on this one. So we might have Jameis Winston throwing to Rashid Shaheed all game long, trying to make that one happen there. So very, very interesting on this one. The Saints still have a outside shot of getting into the playoffs on that. Carolina does not. So that being the case, but the Saints have had a very tough time trying to close games out and cover games at home. So this and Carolina trying to play spoiler a little bit. So nothing beats the feeling of getting to play spoiler against a in-division opponent. So this game here is another one that I think is closer than a lot of people are going to necessarily give this in credit for. This is one that a lot of folks out there see this thing as being almost a touchdown type of game in favor of the Saints. I think this is more of a field goal game, and this is going to come down much later into the final seconds of this football game that I think a lot of folks are wanting or willing to give the Saints credit for, or give the Panthers credit for in this one. So this is one that I think is going to be much closer. Again, I don't see many points being scored in this one. So this is going to be kind of a tight, tough defensive battle in this one. Let's go ahead and talk about another tight defensive battle. That being, of course, the Jets and Houston going into this one. The Jets seemingly, whenever anybody plays the Jets, the under comes into play on this one. The Jets have not had an over hit in the last 6 games that they've been in. The Texans also have had a couple of straight unders come into play on this one. So I'm looking for this one to be a lower scoring game. So take that into consideration when you're looking at some of your fantasy options there as well. But that being the case, right? CJ Stroud, very interested to see how this Texans offense looks and works without Tank Dell. Right? Like Tank Dell and CJ Stroud were really having that chemistry come together and really starting to play out there. We saw Nico Collins have a very big game on this one. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the Jets kind of, maneuver this one. Are we going to see Sauce Gardner do a little bit more of a shadow? Are we going to see, how they're going to really work on this one and how they're going to play this one out? But Collins definitely, even though he's got a tough matchup, all of that, is still a guy that should be in the starting lineups and should be a decent fantasy option for you this week. I think that he'll still be a wide receiver 2, even if it's a back end wide receiver 2 type of finish, right? We're not going to see him go out there and put up almost 200, put up a massive performance here against the Jets, but I think he'll put up a serviceable game out there. So this one here should be very interesting, very fun to watch here as well. Alrighty, let's take a look here and start moving towards some of the afternoon games. And again, guys, if you have any questions about your fantasy rosters, have any thoughts about any of that, let's throw them in the chat. Let's get those talked about. Let's get you guys ready, set to rock and roll here for your Week 14 matchup. Alrighty, so let's take a look here at the afternoon slate of games, and we'll start off here with the Vikings and the Raiders. Minnesota, road favorites on this one. Now, the Raiders have been playing much better football since they let Josh McDaniels go, and I think we see some of that continue, but I do think that the Vikings find a way to get a win on the road, right? The Vikings are needing to win in order to still have a shot at the playoffs. And, right, like the biggest question mark that I'm looking to see in this game is, what does Justin Jefferson look like? What does this offense kind of change around the addition of Justin Jefferson back into this offense? And what does the chemistry look like between him and Josh Dobbs? Right? Like those are just some of the questions that I'm looking for and seeing on how that's going to kind of play out there. If I've got the luxury of potentially not having to play Justin Jefferson this week for fantasy, I might take that option there and not have to necessarily put him into a starting lineup if I've got other options to do that. Excuse me. Or if I've got, my seating is locked up, things like that. Like, just from the standpoint that I think we might see them ease him back just a little bit on this one. And then I'm looking for them to go fully bonkers on the Justin Jefferson train here next week on that one. So, all righty. Question coming in here from Ethan over on YouTube. Start Bijan or Gibbs this week. And that's a good one. Let's take a look at this here real quick on a side-by-side type of comparison, right? So Bijan Robinson getting Tampa Bay, which, in memory, that typically is going to be a harder matchup there. Tampa Bay's defense, though, not what it has been as of late. Chicago is who Gibbs has got matched up against. They've been a little bit more forgiving here, but I think that Bijan Robinson has, and he's a guy that has gotten a much better kind of run lately. Like Arthur Smith really seemingly, understands that we should be seeing Bijan Robinson on the field more and more. Bijan getting, snap counts in the around 70% the last few games here. So certainly kind of, helping that out. He's been getting up around 20 touches, 20 opportunities per game. So the volume is certainly there for Bijan, and I think the volume will stay there for Bijan this week. Jamar Gibbs, a little bit different type of deal, right? Like he's still splitting that backfield on this one. He's getting anywhere from about 50 to 60% of the snaps, right? But the goal line work is very much David Montgomery's on this one. So touchdown upside is capped on this one. And they've got both similar PPR type of upside to it. Between the two, if I've got to start one or the other, it's going to be Bijan over Gibbs. But I'm also very curious as to what other running backs you've got or what other flex options you've got that you're able to have the luxury of picking Gibbs or Bijan. Because a lot of managers that have those two guys are, pretty much having to play those guys every week in, week out. So, Ethan, if you can let me know who your other running back is that you're going to be starting over either one of these guys, and or the flex options, I'd love to see that, love to hear that, and let's look through that there as well. But between the two, Bijan is my guy this week. So, and while we wait for Ethan to put the other running back and flex options in there, we'll go ahead and take a look here kind of at our next matchup here. And that's going to be Seattle, San Francisco. This is a matchup that on paper, San Francisco is just going to run away with. And typically when we see those types of things, it means that the underdog has a puncher's chance here. And this being an in-division game, Seattle's in a must-win type of territory, right? Like if they have to pretty much win to get in type of for the playoffs there. So if they lose this game, like their playoff chances dip dramatically. So I don't know that Seattle's going to be able to pull out a win, but I think that they've got enough to keep this game closer than a lot of folks are thinking. Like this is an almost 2 touchdown type of spread on this one. I think Seattle can keep this thing to about a 1 touchdown, 10-point type of deal here. So while they might lose, I think that they're going to keep this thing a little bit closer than a lot of folks out there would necessarily anticipate on this one. And so this one here should be an interesting to watch, a little bit more interesting to watch than maybe initial sight would give it. And Ethan's saying that it's a pretty deep 6-team PPR. Okay, 6 teams, that makes sense. Currently starting Kyren, Achane, Gibbs, have Eckler, Bijan, and JT on this bench. Okay, yep, that makes sense. All right. If you're talking a 16 PPR, you're going to have a lot more of that name power, star power available to you, and so is everybody else on the rosters there as well. But Kyren, I think he'll be all right, even though he's got a really, really tough defensive matchup going up against Baltimore this week. Achane, I think he'll be all right there as well. I'd probably roll Bijan over Gibbs, though, just from the standpoint that Bijan has really emerged that's his backfield, at least over the last 4 weeks here, whereas Gibbs is still very much in the timeshare, and Monty still gets all the goal line work, and they really just use a two back system there. So Gibbs, where he gives you the upside, is going to be off the PP work, but the PPR work that he's going to get is not going to be really any different than what Bijan is able to get there as well. So it's a neutral playing field, and at that point, I want the guy that's getting more opportunities per game. So at least that's how I would run that. And you can, if you disagree or you got some different thoughts on that, it is your team to manage, and you can rock and roll that as you see fit. Just that's how I would look at that and do that. So. Alrighty, let's take a look here at our next afternoon game matchup. This one here is one that's, I know a lot of folks when the schedule came out early preseason, they were licking their chops. Like, I can't wait to get to this game and this matchup because this could be AFC title game type of competition, all of that type of thing. And of course, I'm talking about the Bills and the Chiefs, and neither one of those teams really clicking on all cylinders right now. And the Chiefs, seemingly enough, the offense seems to be more the struggle than the defensive side of it. The defense have been playing pretty well. The Bills kind of up and down all season long. So this is one of those that this matchup here is going to be an interesting one. The Bills have been very successful over over the course of McDermott's career there as the head coach, coming off of a bye. So they've been very successful winning games on that one. Now, that being the case, this one is in Kansas City. I got to believe that Kansas City wins this game at home. So this is one of those two that the Chiefs are still in the hunt for the number one seed on that one, and you know that they're going to be trying to rock and roll it that way. So I think that the Bills keep this thing close. But I do think that the Chiefs manage to find a way winning this one at home, especially coming off of that loss last week at Lambeau. So I think that we're going to be in store for some really good football and a really fun game to watch. But I do think that we see the Chiefs sneak one out here at home. Alrighty, let's take a look here at our next matchup. And again, guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, let's throw them in the chat. Let's go ahead and chat it out. We're talking some Friday night fantasy football. So weekly huddle. Let's rock and roll through these things. Let's have some fun. Alrighty. So let's take a look here at the Denver and Los Angeles game, the Chargers and the Broncos. Taking a look at this one, right? The Chargers certainly kind of favored in this one. I don't know that I can agree with that one. I'm looking at the Broncos in this one. Broncos have been playing much better, much stouter on the defensive side of the ball. The offense have been doing some pretty good things here as well. The Chargers defense has been bad against opposing fantasy quarterbacks here. So I think Russell Wilson's in store for a good game. I think Courtland Sutton's in store for a good game. Wouldn't surprise me if we see Courtland Sutton find the end zone yet again in this one. And I think that we can see the Broncos kind of keep Keenan Allen a little bit more in check on this one. Austin Eckler has been struggling lately. I don't think that changes. And I'm certainly tempering my expectations for Austin Eckler this week again in this matchup. So, both of these teams are must win to try and keep any sort of playoff hope alive. The Broncos have a very tough road ahead of them to try and make the playoffs. The Chargers have an even tougher road ahead of them. Both of these teams fall to almost playoff irrelevant with a loss this week. So both of these teams in division game, you know that they're going to be bringing the heat in this one and trying to outduel their in-division opponent. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look here at the Cowboys and the Eagles. This is a really fun Sunday night matchup here. This is one that I'm really glad that we get to see this one in a primetime game. The Cowboys have been really good as favorites this season. This game in Dallas, I think that certainly helps them here. And again, a couple of teams that this division is still up for grabs a little bit, and certainly moves up into grabs, especially if Dallas wins this one. So So yeah, I do think that we're going to see Dallas find a way to squeak this one out. Philadelphia, I think that we're going to see a big bounce back coming from them, especially after that last performance that they just put up against the Niners last week. I think they're going to be looking to try and prove some things here. But I do think that we see the Cowboys come away with a home victory here. I think this is going to come down though to whoever has the ball last, and this is going to be a field goal game when it's all said and done. So very excited to see this one. I think we're going to see a lot of fireworks when this one's all said and done, and very excited that we get to see this one on the Sunday night slate. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on into the Monday night games. And again, guys, if you got questions, let's throw them in the chat. Let's talk about them. Let's get you guys set for the Week 14 road ahead here. So Titans, Dolphins. This is one that I think is pretty straightforward. That we're going to see the Dolphins come out and just handle business. So I do think that we're going to see Raheem Mostert have a pretty good run here. I do think that Devon A-Chain gets his. I think Tyreek Hill puts up a monster game in this one here, and we're going to start seeing the push for. Yeah, there's been all this talk about Tyreek getting to 2,000 yards receiving on a season. I think we really see a pace to keep that one alive and keep that one going, and a push for that one. The Titans struggled on the road. This game's in Miami, and I don't think this game's going to be very, very close going into the fourth quarter. So I think the Dolphins kind of run away and hide in this one. Another Monday night game. We got the Packers. We've got the Giants. The Packers have sneakily gotten to 6-6 on the season. The Giants still struggling on this one. And the Packers have done well when they are favored over the last 4 or 5 games here. So I do think that we're going to see the Giants go in to New York, get a win, keep that going there. And it certainly would help out the Packers playoff hopes with a win on this Monday night here. So again, a game that I don't think is going to be overly close. The Giants have struggled in prime time. They've struggled on the they struggled just kind of up and down across the board. And I don't know that we see much of that change here this week. And I think that they're going to struggle when we get into that Monday night game here as well. So if I've got options to pivot on just about everybody but Saquon Barkley in that matchup, I am pivoting off of Giants guys and going from there. So, alrighty. Well, guys, it's going to take me down kind of to the end of everything that we've got on the slate here to talk about. If you have any questions, let's go ahead and get those things in the chat here. We'll make sure that we get those questions answered before we call it a night here. And then we'll be back on Tuesday night. Should have Kevin, Alex, and myself back, the whole crew back on Tuesday night here to rock and roll through getting ready for Week 15 and the start of fantasy playoffs here. But we are very much in the last week for most folks in that regular season schedule. I know a lot of folks are win to get playoff seeding, all of that kind of stuff. And for everybody that's in one of those situations, best of luck to you. Hopefully we can get you guys to where you need to be for to make that march on the cash and trophies here end of season. But I'm not seeing any other questions come in, any other thoughts come in here. So at that point, I think I'm going to call it a night here. Thanks to everybody for tuning in and chatting. Very much appreciate all the questions, all the good stuff coming through there. You can, of course, find us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the things at Good Old Boys FF. And again, best way to support this independent podcast, head over to YouTube, click the subscribe button, ring the bell. Really helps us out over there as well. So since I'm not seeing any of the questions come in, I think we're going to call it a night. Like I said, Kevin should be back Tuesday. Alex should be back Tuesday. I'll be back Tuesday, and we'll do it at the normal time, 11 p.m. Eastern, for the Tuesday night show to get ready, set to go here, week 15 and the start of fantasy playoffs. Everybody tuning in, thanks so much. We're going to call it a night. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.